This week, we're reading Thorn by Intisar Khanani, otherwise known as Everyone is Sus and Falada is a Talking Horse.
Hi readers, I'm Jordan.
And I'm Katie.
And welcome to Not Another Heroine, the podcast where we break down the best and worst fictional heroines, those swashbuckling ladies who have to work a little harder than expected for their happy ending.
Want to see what's next on our TBR list? Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Instagram for a sneak peek at upcoming content or to help us pick our next book. I feel like we should apologize first at the beginning of this.
Yeah, we gave you, dear readers, a warning on our last pick of the week about our commitment to Foxglove, and we don't have it in us.
No. Jordan told me that she struggled with it. She read some reviews and she's like, oh, I don't think this is it. And I just took that at like face value. I was like, yeah, I'm not going to read it either.
I feel like, let me justify where I'm coming from on Foxglove, because Belladonna ends and everything seems somewhat concluded. Mm-hmm. Like there's not a lot of conflict left to pursue. Yeah, they kind of throw in this other character, Fate, and you're like, oh, it's interesting. And then the cousin is interesting. So I was really hoping that Foxglove would be the cousin story and main bitch would be like a side character. Mm-hmm. Not that she's bad, she's just kind of boring. And Death was super interesting, but we don't need to know any more about him. So I was in Barnes & Noble last weekend. I picked up Foxglove and it's fucking massive. I think it's like, I don't know, 500 or 600 pages maybe.
Girl, what?
And I'm like, I don't need 500 or 600 more pages of these two characters.
I'm good.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. So I looked at the synopsis, looked how it ends, and it's basically an excuse to do a love triangle.
Oh.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, based on the reviews that I did read, it's like a setup for a love triangle, but Death also doesn't make a whole lot of appearances throughout.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Because I read the prologue. That's the one that comes before this morning. And I got some like weird vibes. I'm like, this is not enjoyable.
No, and the prologue, that's as far as I got on the sample, where you're sitting in Fate's like land.
I was like, who the fuck is this dude?
Yeah. So that's why we're not reading Foxglove like we promised you, but we're coming back with something way better.
Oh yeah, we pulled this one out of the bag, and it's
out
like,
of
why
our
didn't we?
Ass is where we pulled this.
But why didn't we do this earlier? This is like the quintessential like Katie and Jordan book.
Yeah, this is up there because everything is on point with this book. Mm-hmm. And this book is Thorn, by the way.
Yeah, Thorn by Intisar Khanani.
It is everything that you want in a fantasy romance, and especially in a fairy tale retelling. Because this book is based on the Grimm's fairy tale, The Goose Girl.
Which I zero knowledge of.
So I had never read The Goose Girl. I read it last night. It's super short. Most of the fairy tales in there are like a page to 2 pages long. Okay. They're very digestible. I didn't realize how true to the original fairy tale that the author stayed until I read it last night. So as we kind of go through this book, I'll kind of jump in with some points as far as like, oh, this was actually part of the original storyline too.
That's cool. Have you ever seen those TV shows or movies where it's like the additional extra cut and they have like little pop-ups that are like fun facts? That's what you're doing to the story, and I love it.
I think it'll be a fun little adventure. But yeah, this book is just gold. And you and I were sitting, our last recording session, we're like, what can we do instead? And we were going through all of our books, and then this one just popped up because we'd both read it. It came out how many years ago?
Quite a long time ago. I'm Googling it. 2012.
So Amazon betrayed me. So I have...
Betrayed? Oh, betrayed. Oh.
Betrayed. What is betrayed? I mean, that is...
I was like, this is fun. What's that mean?
That is probably a thing somewhere. But I have 2 digital copies of this book.
Really?
Yeah. And I went into my Kindle library. I'm like, what? And I originally read this in 2013.
Yeah.
Right after it came out. And then I remember reading this in like recently, a couple years ago. That's the copy I had. Like, so I have the 2020 copy and a 2013 copy. And I have no memory of reading this in 2013 whatsoever. So this was the 3rd read for me.
Well, so this was my 2nd read because I read it probably like 2014, 2015. And 100% same, forgot everything about this book, but I remember enjoying it. And that was
it. Like, I think it's partially because it reads so quickly.
Yeah.
You said 270 pages, right?
Yeah, it's super short. It's like 200 and something pages, like just under 300, I think.
This is not a Sarah J. Maas investment at all. This is very like, pick it up, read it in a day, be done and happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I also think it's self-published.
Really?
Yeah, because I was reading the dedication at the end, I think, or the author's notes or whatever. And I think the author's husband just suggested that she like self-publish her own book. And I think that's what happened with this one. So it's like quadruply more.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because it's phenomenal. Like the writing is fantastic. The pacing is great. And she's got another series after this one.
Yeah. I was about to Sunbolt. Did you ever read that?
Yeah, I sure did.
Yeah, that one was equally good too. And I think I was going to read the second one and then I like forgot to.
I want to say I started the second one because the first one kind of ends on a cliffhanger, right?
Yeah.
And now there's 3.
Oh, Jesus.
I want to say.
That might be a fun one to like revisit now. Because I remember distinctly like enjoying the first one. It felt maybe a little YA, but in an enjoyable way.
Yeah, it did feel a little bit younger than Thorn. It's going to be, I think it's hard to top Thorn.
Yeah, it is.
It's a perfect standalone novel.
I will say, and this could be the Gen Z in me, but the first part was a little bit hard to get through. It kind of, the language was a little bit dense. Like it wasn't easy to read. And then it like became easier to read. But the first like chapter or two, I was like, I don't know if I'm tripping balls, but like I cannot read or string a sentence together to understand this.
I have no frame of reference for that.
Like, I don't know. It could be that it's been a while since I've read like a fantasy storytelling, like that kind of prose maybe, and I've just been like binge reading, trashy romance.
I can kind of see that because it feels like the author is trying to stay true to like the styling of a traditional fairy tale. So like the character descriptions and like this is told in first person, but it doesn't feel quite like a first person narration.
Yeah.
And the characters are kind of almost caricatures of themselves, some of them.
Yeah. I would say that especially about the love interest a little bit. Like,
oh, yeah. And like the mother figure, the brother, the king. Like the king, we never learn his name. He's just the king.
King.
Yeah, I think and we'll get into that as we kind of talk about the story. But we also wanted to do something new with these full-length episodes now, is we do similar books for our pick of the week books. And we'd also like to start doing that for these as well, because it might, if you don't like this one as much, maybe you'd like one of our similar books. Or if you've read those similar books, maybe you'll listen to the full episode just to find out some more. So I threw some in here. I don't know if you have any off the top of your head.
I don't have any, but I have comments on one of them.
Oh, no.
This is exciting.
Oh, no. Oh, I think I know which one you're going to comment on because you didn't like it.
Which one?
The Girl of Fire and Thorns.
Oh, yeah. I have major beef with this book for whatever fucking reason.
That's by Ray Carson.
Yeah. This came out, there was like a surge of fairy tale retelling high fantasy books in like the 2014, 2015 timeframe. And I read this book and the first part got me so hard. I was like, I love this. I was like smoking through this book. And then I didn't love that she had this kind of hate relationship with her body type, and then she got thin, by circumstances, and then all of a sudden her life was like rosy and amazing and everything was perfect. I had major beef with that like character line. Ugh, everything's fine.
I had never thought of it in that like frame, and that makes sense actually.
Because I loved everything about this book except that arc. Because she was like whiny in the beginning and like, oh, like, woe is me, like everything is horrible. I hate my body, which like, that's fine. But then she went through the desert, lost a bunch of weight, and then all of a sudden she was beautiful and everything was amazing and sunny. And she was just like, everything is amazing. Like, why wasn't I skinny my whole life? Like, fuck that. Like, the high school Katie had some major beef with that.
That is a problematic trope. I enjoyed that entire trilogy. I didn't read it with that That wasn't a trigger for me.
I could see that.
I picked this as a similar book because of her transformation from like meek and like humble character who doesn't really have a lot of sense of security in herself to like, oh, I'm an all-powerful princess, et cetera, et cetera.
100%. It's similar themes. 100%. Yeah, I just had beef about body image.
That's completely justified. Like I might reread that book with that in mind.
And it would be interesting too to reread it now that it's like less of a trigger for me and see if I like maybe just had a very visceral response.
That's fair.
Yeah, but that's a good parallel book.
One of the other books I have on here is a similar book to Thorn. It's called Deerskin by Robin McKinley.
This is so in the pick of the week last week, we were talking about books that people recommend and you're like, I'm just not going to read it for no fucking coherent reason. This is the book because all of me is like, I know this is a book I would enjoy. Jordan talks about it. She's read it like 15 times. Like, I know I would enjoy this, but I'm like, I can't just fucking download it and read it.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Okay. So for Deerskin, I could not finish this book when I started to read it as like a teenager. I picked it up at like 15 or 16 because I blew through all of Robin McKinley's books as a teenager.
She's like the OG.
Yeah. It's a great book, but I would not suggest it for any young readers because of the elements in it. There's a lot of abuse in it. There's some problems with it. However, it is very, very similar to Thorn in the sense of like some of the abuse themes, the princess themes. It's a fairy tale retelling. It's a little known fairy tale. And I love it because the hero is non-conventional. Like he is not your typical...
I love that.
I don't want to spoil it, but it's almost worth reading because he is... So in The Girl of Fire and Thorns, the heroine is like plump in the beginning. Our hero in Deerskin is kind of like on the heavier side a little bit. And he's just like this very like, not meek, but just kind of content with his life. He's a prince, but he likes his hunting dogs and he likes to go hunting. And he's just a nice guy who's not like power hungry or anything, but he has such a healthy relationship with the princess in this book. And it's exactly what the heroine needs. It's like a very good demonstration of like not traditional hero.
Wow. I'm like flabbergasted because I cannot remember the last time I read a book that had a like love interest that didn't have all kinds of like dramatic problems.
It's the only way a love interest could have been created for this storyline. Because let's just say there's a... You know what? I don't want to get into how problematic Deerskin is for like young readers. But it's the only way you can have a romance line in that story. Totally worth reading, but it might emotionally scar you.
I could see that
a little bit.
Just a little bit. Yeah.
Is there any other? So I have a few others on here, but is there any ones that are coming to mind? Similar books to Thorn?
I feel like I read one that was maybe another retelling of the Goose Girl.
Yeah, I've read that one too. It's called The Goose Girl, I think, or something like that.
Really?
Yeah.
You got me fucked up.
I think it's called Shannon by Shannon Hale. There is a book called The Goose Girl. It's like a YA fantasy romance.
I'm typing in the background if you can hear me, but it's because I'm frantically Googling. This is the book. Oh my God.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Who's the author? Did I get the author?
Shannon Hale.
Yes.
Girl,
my brain.
Holy fuck.
I don't know why I remember this shit, but not important things.
I am flabbergasted right now. Yeah, this is the book with the blonde chick and the hair blowing in the wind.
Exactly.
There's no way, readers, that you have not seen this book cover. Like,
I feel like it's not as satisfying because it's a little bit more shallow of a retelling.
Yeah, I could see that. I wonder if this is the book. I almost want to reread this to see if this is the book I'm thinking of, because there's another one, and I was confused when I was reading Thorn, and I got halfway through, and then she didn't get her own cottage to be a goose girl. So maybe this isn't the retelling.
There might be another one because it sounds familiar too.
Yeah, because there was a book. It came out right around the time of Thorn. Had a very similar. What was going on in 2014 that all of a sudden we were like Goose Girl?
That was like the kickoff for fantasy romance and YA New A books.
It really was. Yeah, but there was another book. I need to find it now, and it's probably somewhere in my Goodreads, which is not user-friendly to find things, honestly. But it was a Goose Girl retelling, and she had her own cottage, and it was like she got rescued. I cannot for the life of me think of what this book... So, readers, if you
know the book, please help us.
Yeah, because it's in my brain and it's tickling, but it is not producing anything.
All right, let's actually get into the story of Thorn. It's kind of sad.
Oh yeah, this beginning part is depresso.
And also, one last like admin note before we get in is there are some trigger warnings for this story. I don't think we'll get into them actually, yes, part 1 and part 2. So next week's episode as well. There is abuse, physical and emotional abuse by a family member on the main character. There is also a sexual assault scene in part 2 when we cover it.
To a secondary character.
It's pretty vividly described.
Yeah.
I would say. I can't think of anything else.
No, those are the big trigger warnings.
Yeah.
Things to be aware of. Mind your triggers.
Yeah. And on that dark note, we're introduced to our main heroine, Princess Alira. Mm-hmm. She is the only daughter of a very bitchy queen, for lack of like any other descriptions, is like, and probably like a queen in not a bad way.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like if you're in a position of power in these land settings, you have to be not the nicest person if you're going to succeed and do well. Mm-hmm. So her mother just kind of has a disdain for Alira.
It's like a coldness.
Yeah.
She's kind of described as not haughty, but just like indifferent almost, but negatively indifferent.
And it's implied that Alira has done something or is a certain way to like justify the
trash man.
The trash man is here. If you can hear the squeaking in the background, that is the garbage man arriving.
Also, shout out to all of our like sanitary workers. Like that's a very rated, not well liked or appreciated job. Because like during COVID, when the like first couple weeks and there's no trash service, that was fucking insane.
And if you've ever been to a city where they don't have a good sanitation system, holy shit, man.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So just a little shout out.
Also, though, I think it would be kind of fun, like playing a gigantic claw machine with getting the cans.
Oh,
like,
100%. Yeah.
Right?
Have you seen Arrested Development?
No.
Oh, that happens.
Oh.
Anyways.
Okay. Back to Princess Alira.
Yeah.
So she is the only daughter. She has a brother who is an abusive drunk asshole.
Like, a psychopath, 100%.
Just bullies her, follows her around, beats the shit out of her, like calls her mean names. Mm-hmm. And her mother just lets this happen. Mm-hmm. So this is the setup for our heroine. And then basically opening day of this book, a delegation from the kingdom of Menaya. Is that how you would say it?
I would just see the MEN and be like, yeah, that one. Yeah.
We'll go with Menaya until someone corrects me or we find a better pronunciation.
I mean, it sounds right. Menaya.
I don't trust any of my words anymore after the ensorcel incident. Yep. I will never forget that or forgive myself. So a delegation from a much bigger kingdom, like an empire, arrives. And it's presumably to seek a marriage alliance with Princess Lyra and the prince of that kingdom.
Mm-hmm. I kind of love this part because it's told from first person, and Alira has no fucking idea what's happening the whole time that the delegation is here until her mom says something. And I kind of appreciated that like uncertainty of kind of her like naivety.
Naivete?
Not
I should have kept my mouth
so much better. But just like her,
tell me now.
Naivety.
Sure, yeah, we'll go with that.
About the whole situation was kind of refreshing because I feel like a lot of heroines in fantasy romance or just fantasy books seem to have this kind of preternatural like understanding of the world around them, somewhat like undeserved by a 16 to 20-year-old.
I would say 100%. Yeah.
So it's kind of refreshing that she's like, there's a lot of like big guys here, and
there's
like, why the fuck are they visiting?
Yeah, so this delegation arrives. It's the king of that kingdom with a fuck ton of soldiers. Like all of his warriors arrive.
Yeah.
And like you said, Alira is just, this is interesting. I'm going to go play with my horse.
Yeah. But she also has like kind of interesting insights too that I think someone her age would kind of like catch on to, because she's confused because she's like, we're just like a tin cup kingdom and like the backwoods of this continent. Like, why the fuck are they here? It's like a very reasonable, like based on what her knowledge would be at that age, like that's a reasonable kind of like, why the fuck are they?
Yeah. Another note about our princess is she's 15.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
girl.
I remember that tripping me up the first time I read it. So
what the fuck?
I think it comes up one time where you learn about her age. And then I want to say at least like a year or two passes throughout the story based on the seasons changing. But don't go into this expecting to read from the mindset of a 15-year-old. It's just, that's not how it reads. And it's definitely not for young audiences.
No, I assume she was like 17.
Yeah.
I don't wrong assumption on my part. I don't know why.
But I mean that's true to like how you read the character.
Yeah.
Though. So so this delegation arrives and Alira is avoiding things at all costs. Yeah. And she's not really having any trouble doing that because her mother really doesn't want her involved. Her brother doesn't want her involved. They kind of treat her as like a oh, you're gonna fuck something up if you stay here. Like you're gonna open your mouth and say something bad.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's trying to like run away from her brother too at the same time. So this kind of offers a reprieve from her brother's torment because he's busy with all the, being prince and shit.
So as she's kind of running off, like she takes her horse out into the fields and she's just happy doing her own thing. She's not really happy. She's just kind of existing.
Yeah.
She's
same brain. That was awesome.
Yeah. This is a very important detail that you will not pick up on the first read.
No.
And even on the third read, I apparently forgot about how important this detail was.
Yep.
But so she has a relationship with the wind.
Yeah. And that sounds really weird, but it's just imagine a sort of ethereal kind of can't talk in full sentences, is just like vibing out. It's
like a comforting presence.
Yeah. Yeah. And it'll be like, oh, hello, here. Sad.
Yeah, it like tries to convey like meaning in one or two words. And she makes a comment, I think pretty early on in the story, that it's very rare for the wind to string words together into sentences.
She's like baffled by that.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck?
Remember the wind.
Yeah. Because it was cute at the end when that whole...
Yeah. It's very satisfying, but remember the wind.
Yeah.
Okay. So she kind of goes back to the words.
Palace Castle.
And then there's various feasts and everything going on. And it comes to light that, yes, in fact, the king is here to negotiate a marriage alliance. And the king is like walking the halls and comes across Alira and her brother because her brother has cornered her, right?
Oh, it is the king, isn't it? Or maybe it's like the captain. Someone from Manaya kind of stumbles upon them as he's like kind of pinned her up against a wall, pulling her hair. And they're like, what exactly do you think you're doing right now?
So I think it's before the marriage contract is signed because there's two incidents.
There are.
Yeah. So she's kind of with her brother and her brother's about to like pull some mean shit on her. And the king's like strolls up, like, oh, what are you doing? And the king is this very imposing, intimidating warrior-like figure. Like you're not going to fuck around with this guy. And he's like, Princess Alira, would you show me the castle gardens? And she's
this is the...
Yeah. It's just kind of a minor scene, but it has some import later on in the road because there's an ongoing mystery, right? Of like, why is this big, powerful kingdom still here? Like, why do they want Alira?
Yeah.
Because they came there specifically for her. So the king walks her out to the garden and they have a conversation. He's like, well, are you open to this marriage alliance? Do you want to come? And I thought this was a super good development for the character to kind of treat it like I don't really have a choice.
Yeah.
You're giving me a choice. And I guess that sounds okay. Like the way... Like you said, the way a 17-year-old or a 15-year-old would approach a situation like that.
I kind of, again, it was refreshing having Alira be someone that's not meek necessarily.
I'd say she's pretty meek.
Yeah, because again, in a lot of fantasy books, and this isn't a bad thing because I enjoy reading these characters, but you have these 17-year-olds that are really headstrong, really aggressive, like have opinions about everything. And so it's nice to have Alira who's a little bit more just like aware of her circumstances and like, I don't really get to make decisions and like whatever is fine. Like, it's not like I can really decide anything. And I think her coming into the ability to make decisions is important to her character arc later on, that she's like deciding to do things with her life. So this like beginning part is just like, yeah, I'm here. Yeah. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, I do too. And so the king's like, okay, well, if you marry into my family, like you become one of us and we will protect you. Which again, in the moment, you don't realize the significance of this scene and this line until way later on. And she's like, well, that sounds nice to get away from my evil brother and bitchy mom. So sure, let's get married. Well, not to the king, to the king's son, who's not
Can't
there.
be out that.
Yeah, they have a fancy dinner. Everyone signs the contract, and that night she receives a gift from the king, and it's this fancy blue cloak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and again has significance later on in the story. So I think it would be really easy to skim this book.
Oh, 100%.
So I would recommend not skimming it as much as possible. Like, pay attention to the details, because as short as this book is, 270 something pages, right? Like, every single thing and scene has significance. So yeah.
It's kind of satisfying too when you get to the end and it
you
like
put all the pieces
comes
together.
Full circle. Yeah.
And a shout out. So here's where we start getting into the original fairy tale callbacks. Is the princess in the original fairy tale is described as very meek and soft, and just kind of does what everyone tells her to do.
Interesting.
I think there's a line in there, if I can find it. Yeah, so here's a quote from the actual fairy tale. But the princess was very gentle and meek, so she said nothing to her maid's ill behavior.
Oh, well, that is literally... Yeah, but I can also appreciate that. Like, sometimes people add a little bit too much, like, pizzazz and change to these original fairy tales, and it kind of, like...
distorts it.
Yeah, mid. And then it kind of comes out of line of, like, why things are happening. But I think when Intisar Khanani did a really good job of taking the outline of the story and then like building on it, but not changing it enough to make it something else. Like,
yeah, she stayed very true to it while ultimately conveying a different like moral lesson.
Yeah.
So marriage contract is signed, and then she receives her blue cloak, and she's kind of in her room, going to bed late at night, and she hears a sound in her room. And it's the sound of like a man clearing his throat.
I did not like this part.
This was fucking weird.
Yeah.
Right?
It's the first part that you're really confused, because kind of Alira wakes up just in the middle of the night, and then all of a sudden there's this man in her room. And then he's like, Manaya has a lot of enemies. You need to really be careful and like take care of yourself. And then this other woman comes into the room.
Yeah, it's like out of nowhere. Bam, bam, bam. We have action scene. But like, you wake up in the middle of the night and there's a man you've never seen before.
Fuck no.
And he's clearly from like Manaya.
Yeah.
Like, he looks like those people do.
Yeah.
Has a funny accent.
Yeah. And it's just immediate sorcery and magic inserted into her life. And I kind of appreciate the fact that Alira the whole time is just staring like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah, she can barely process it. She's just having a conversation with him. Like, but what else would you do? You can't do anything else but have a conversation with these random people who appear in your bedroom just in the middle of the night.
I am so like disassociating, disoriented when I first wake up. Like, I can only imagine if all this shit is happening and it's like the middle of the night and you're like, what? Where am I?
Right? Like, have you ever woken up in the middle of the night and then like gone back to sleep and not remember the next morning? And then you're like, didn't I dream that?
Yeah, no idea. Yeah, so I can only imagine how she's feeling as these people are like having a whole ass conversation in her room in the middle of the night.
Yeah, and it comes out like the dude is a sorcerer. He's not really there. He's like projecting himself. But this dude who appears in her room and this woman who also appears have major beef with each other, like hate each other. Like, Alira is just kind of caught in the middle of these two. So they both end up like vanishing. Like, Alira has this "you have no power over me" moment with this woman witch creature who also appears, and so she disappears, but not before "ha ha ha, I'll get you, my pretties." And like, has like a Wicked Witch of the West moment. And then Alira wakes up.
Yep. Yeah. And kind of life goes on as normal until it's like time to get in the wedding caravan and everything's fine. Except,
oh my God.
Yeah. Her mom, the queen, basically kind of pulls her into her room before she leaves. And she's like, I secretly practice witchcraft, and I'm going to give you this little like handkerchief. And I'm going to do some like creepy...
super fucking creepy.
It's so creepy. And then she like ties her knowledge, strength, and love into the handkerchief with like a little dip of her blood. And then Alira's meant to like dip it into Prince Kestrin's wine, which is the guy that she's going to marry. It's all very weird. And you're reading it and you're like, what the fuck is happening?
I was confused. I'm like, what is this supposed to do? Which is probably how Alira felt in the moment. Like, okay, here's a token, but like, you don't love me. I have no strength. How is this helping me?
Where are we pulling these out of?
Yeah. So yeah, that happens.
It's confusing. And if you're reading it and you're like, I don't understand.
Just like, roll with it. Just accept it and move on.
Yep. I also feel like I never really understood it, even like after reading it twice now.
It's kind of explained later, but not really.
No. So just like roll with the punches on it. Something is enchanted.
So her mother does that right before she gets into her like wedding carriage caravan thing. And then her brother pulls another asshole brother move and announces to like the caravan, oh, here's a beautiful white horse as a wedding gift.
Oh, yeah.
And this white horse is like trotted out and beautiful, but can't be ridden.
No, he is fucking feral.
Yeah. Like you can't barely touch this animal.
No.
And her mother also denies Alira taking her own horse, Fleetwind, with her.
Which is so sad.
It's just very sad. So she's got this asshole horse and this weird charm blood token thing from her mom.
Go get married.
And then there's one final gift. Lady Valka.
Okay, that's where I thought we were going, but I'm like, that's not a gift at all.
Nope, not at all.
So the queen has basically denied Alira's request to have like her friend, maid come with her. And she's like, no, instead you're going to take Lady Valka, who, she's your childhood friend. You'll lovely enjoy this, find her a husband and get her married because she can't come back here.
This is like classic Mean Girls. I totally pictured, God, what's her face?
Regina George.
Mm-hmm. And not, who plays the redhead?
Lindsay Lohan.
Oh, just that minor actress.
Yeah.
But like, so Alira is also described as very plain, like mousy brown hair, very small. And Lady Valka is this gorgeous redhead.
Yeah, bombacious. That's a word, right?
Bombacious?
Right? Bombastic? Oh, yeah, bombastic side-eye.
And then vivacious, I think is the word.
Probably.
Did you make a new word with bombastic and vivacious?
Just like the very like curvy, like has an attitude all the time, but wears a lot of makeup, bright red hair, done up. That's a type. It's a stereotype.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that is Lady Valka.
Yeah. And they do not get along.
No.
At all.
And it's interesting because their beef is not illuminated until later. And then you're like, holy fuck.
Yeah. And no wonder.
Yeah. I'm not going to spoil it until the end. But just hold on to the fact that she is I forgot the word I created.
But the other aspect here too is that Alira's relationship with Valka and like her reputation as like this meek and like kind of character you can ignore is based on why their friendship disintegrated, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's the whole reason why like everyone treats Alira like she's nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because she gets really kind of walked over by almost everyone until later in the book. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an important part of Lady Valka's characterization is that she thinks that Alira is someone that can be walked over, and she is immediately proven correct.
Yeah.
As we find out on their journey.
So they set off on a journey, and Lady Valka also brought her super bitchy maid with her, who doesn't want to help Alira at all.
Nope. And that's your whole job.
Right? Like, come on. Like, could this poor princess's life get any worse? They're traveling for a couple days. They stop at an inn, and like the king's men are all very respectful towards Alira, and they are treating Valka like garbage. They're like, why are we dealing with this chick? Like, why?
Because she's a bitch. Yeah. It's like deserved.
And then I think like as they're traveling, somebody tries to saddle the white horse.
Yeah.
And I think
it does not go well.
It does not go well. And then later that like night at the inn, Alira goes into the stables because she spends a lot of time at the stables at home. So she feels very like comforted by animals and like kind of being by herself. So she's just chilling with this white horse and kind of talking to herself until the white horse is like, hello, princess. That's so cute.
That was my favorite part of this whole book is just he's like, hey. And she's like, what the fuck?
And he's like, hey, I'm a horse with a capital H.
Yeah.
Like, I just imagine if a horse could wear sunglasses and a blazer, like, that would be this horse.
That's horse, yeah. And it's cute, too, because she's like, do you have a name? And he's like, no, you can just call me Horse. Like, yeah, that checks out. I imagine the stallion from Tangled.
Oh, yeah.
If he could talk, this is that horse.
Yeah. And so this horse is named Falada.
Yeah.
Falada.
Mm-hmm.
Male horse.
But I think it comes out later that's his name. Because at first he's like, you can just call me Horse. Like, I don't fucking know you. Like, who the fuck are you?
I don't even remember.
I don't know. But yeah, he does have a name. But it's like later. And he's like, I guess horses have names. Like, I'll let you know.
And shout out to the original fairy tale. The princess's horse, white horse, was named Falada. And the Falada horse character in the original fairy tale has a prominent role.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. So anyway, so Princess Alira makes friends with the asshole horse, who's like, no, you're still not riding me, but we can hang and chit-chat together.
Yeah, you can like feed me some like yummy snacks.
Give me some grains, bitch.
That's about it.
So they keep traveling. The next day, they stop by a river, and like Valka's acting shady.
Yeah, suspicious.
Sus for our Gen Z listeners.
100% sus. She is the one.
Yeah, and Alira seems to know something's up, but she's like, well, I can't do anything about it. Like, I don't know what's going on, which is, again, very refreshing.
Mm-hmm. And
so it happens again. They're traveling, they continue on, and then they go to a river. The river.
This part kind of fucked me up.
It was bad.
Yeah. So she leans down, or I think Valka offers her like a mug or like a goblet. And she's like, here, you can like take this to go get some water. And, you know, Alira leans down to pick up her glass of water or whatever. And I think she like falls in or is like shoved into the water. Mm-hmm. And we get this kind of like really excruciating like drowning scene almost, but then all of a sudden she's yanked back out and she feels this like kind of stabbing sensation at her neck where she's like kept her mom's charm and she's like, oh, it's not good. And she pops back out and she's like staring at herself.
Yeah, her bones are crunching and changing.
Yeah.
And the witch.
Oh yeah, the witch is like watching this whole thing and she's like
the witch, like this is the witch from the bedroom, popped out of the river from nowhere.
Mm-hmm. And they have body swapped. It's Freaky Friday.
in a like the way they describe the body swap is like, oh, you actually don't want this to happen to you. This sounds very painful.
Yeah, it's almost like a polyjuice potion. Speaking of Harry Potter,
actually, yeah, that's like spot on.
Yeah, but like potion. Permanent.
And then as like a final like getcha moment, the witch says, you shall never speak of this curse whatever to anyone. Yeah, because we have to keep the story going because you can't just confess everything.
Yep.
So there's like an invisible chain choker that kind of wraps around Princess Alira's neck.
Yeah. Isn't there another book that has that same kind of
isn't it fuck, what we read it.
I know.
The Undying King?
Was that?
She had like a key thing around her neck.
Oh, there was another book that I think we've both read that she couldn't talk about it. Maybe that's the Goose Girl one, the other one.
Maybe. There's only so many ways you can prevent your characters from talking aside from like a magical invisible choker chain. Like we should count the number of times we see that.
That would be fun. Anyways, now Lady Valka is now Alira and Alira is now Valka. They have body swapped and Alira is like, oh, this is unfortunate. And all of a sudden she's treated not great by all of the soldiers because, you know, Lady Valka has been a total bitch to all of them. And she's like, well, I don't know what to do now, so I guess I'll just like ride this out.
We're just going to keep traveling forward because, again, what else can she do in this moment? If you grow up the way Princess Alira has grown up with like a being bullied and abused by her brother and kind of ignored by her mother and not really given a sense of power or responsibility or ownership over anything. What else is a character like that going to do in the situation when she's been taken advantage of entirely?
Yeah.
And also no one wants to listen to her because they think she's a total bitch anyway.
Yep. And it's kind of all of that is really codified, whatever word that is. In the next scene, when they arrive in Manaya, Valka steps out. The king kind of approaches her and he's like, Lady Valka, like, you know, or Lady Princess Alira, I'm so excited that you're here. Like, let's go talk to the prince. And everyone kind of scatters off to the wind. And Alira in Valka's body is just kind of standing there and she's like,
I don't know what to do.
What?
So she's like escorted off and given like a random room for the night, like just treated like nobody.
Yep. And so it's just very like, I guess this is my life now.
Very like that's just who Alira is. She just rolls with it. So she comes back, and the king gives her an audience the next day, and says,
"Oh, this part like bursted my bubble."
So the king's like, "Well, the princess, speaking of Valka and the princess's body, has no use for you, and she's asked me to find you some employment somewhere."
Because didn't she say like smack talk? Isn't she like, oh, she's been disrespectful to me the whole trip? Yeah. Oh man, that would have got me heated. Like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking
Katie's
about.
already throwing fists, readers. Like she is fighting like invisible armies right now.
Yes. Oh God. Because the king was like, she's saying all this shit about you, and so like, I guess I'm gonna find you a job, but I ain't gonna be here.
And I thought it's interesting, and it's like a little peep into like the king as a character, because he's like, well, I think something's going on. So if you want to talk to me, like maybe I could find you an escort to get you home if you want to talk to me. But if you don't want to talk to me, you can be the Goose Girl. And
could you imagine? Like, okay, I guess I'm just taking care of geese now.
Well, sweet Alira is like, well, I like animals and no one really likes me at home. I guess I'll be the Goose Girl. And she's not really mad about it.
No. And I think that's my like favorite part at the end of this book, when everything is kind of like culminated. And, obviously this is a fairy tale. And so they eventually discover that Alira, the body swap happened. But they even comment on this exact like moment. And they're like, we knew something was up because this, woman, Lady Valka, who was super uppity, super dickish to everyone, all of a sudden with like supreme grace and, daintfulness and humbleness, was okay to just go and be a Goose Girl.
Yeah, not gonna happen ever.
First red flag. It's kind of like that's a good point.
But doesn't that sound like a nice escape?
Oh, 100%
like,
does.
Oh, you just have to go take care of some geese? That's your job?
Yeah.
Shepherd the geese around with a staff? I'll do that.
Yep. Just like hang out in pastures all day.
Sounds wonderful. Bring a book.
Yeah.
Maybe we should
I think that says something about us.
We should just raise geese. Yeah. That's what we're going to do.
They're kind of mean though.
They're assholes.
Yeah, as Alira immediately finds out.
That's why I like geese though. They're like the badasses of the fowl world.
I could see that. Yeah. And it's funny too, because they think they're bigger and badder than they are.
Yeah.
Like they walk around like they are the size of elephants.
It's so cute though. You ever see them, like the flocks of them at the park? They're just chilling like, we're not moving. Yeah. You get out of my way.
It's like, oh, okay. Yeah. And so she becomes a Goose Girl. And she basically just like kind of invents a whole new identity. And this was fun too. So she kind of introduces herself, I think, to the group of people she works with or works adjacent to down in the like farm stable area. And she's like, oh, my name is Thorina. I take after my mom's name, because she doesn't want to be Lady Valka. Obviously. And so it's this fun kind of first look into her taking control and ownership over her life and actually making decisions and being kind of like snarky.
That's a really good insight. I hadn't seen that. Like I hadn't processed that aspect of the story that in that way, but that makes total sense.
Yeah. Because it's like kind of the first moment where she's like, well, if this is my life, I'm going to like take some ownership of it. And it's like fun because you see that kind of story arc as she starts to take more ownership. And then we get this cute scene too, that when she's like introducing herself as Thorina, I guess that's a kind of flower.
It's a rose.
Yeah. And she like shows it to the people, because obviously she doesn't speak the language, which fuck.
How do you even
know?
No.
And so she like shows them the flower and they're like, oh, okay, so your name is Thorn. And she's like, no, it's really like the whole flower. And they're like, okay, Thorn. And she's like, what? Guess I'm
gonna be Thorn now. Yeah. It's fine.
And it's cute because the next day they all come back with little branches of what their names are. And I was like, oh, she's found a family.
All of these secondary characters she meets, like working in the stables and like in the farm pieces, are all kind of given a little slice of humanity. And they all play a part in like shaping Princess Alira / Thorn as a character.
Yeah.
It was very thoughtfully done. It was interesting rereading this again, because it seems like who doesn't want an escape?
I know.
Right? Like you are taken from your everyday life and given an opportunity to completely start over in a completely random area with a brand new identity. Who hasn't thought about doing that at least once in their life?
100%. Yeah. And I think Alira even kind of comes to that conclusion that she's like, well, if this is my life now, I'm going to make the most of it. And she kind of comments on herself of how like nice her new life is, even though she was a princess in her other life. Like she had the constant responsibility of all of the expectations foisted upon her, you know, dealing with her mother and her brother. And now all of a sudden, all she has to be is the Goose Girl. And she's like, this was like kind of a nice gig. Like,
yeah, it really struck me as like a commentary on escapism and like avoiding responsibility.
Yeah.
Like she's accepting a lot of responsibility by taking this other job, but also avoiding quite a bit.
Yeah.
Like there's all this like courtly drama going on too.
Yeah. I think that was my biggest like annoyance with this book is how much she kind of denies the responsibility upon her. And it takes her a really long time to like get over the escapism and be like, well, I gotta go back to the real world.
Guess I should do what I'm supposed to do because Valka's still there and Valka's still a bitch. And this is where Falada comes into play.
Yeah, he's like the nagging like mom, like, are you just like hanging out here in this fucking pasture while she's fucking up the palace? Are you kidding me?
That's what he does. That's what he says. 'Cause she's like, she takes him out of the stables and like he gets to go with her to herd the geese. And I had this super so cute imagery of like this big badass white beautiful horse like herding geese because he wants to have fun.
He's like, get the fucking line. I think there's even a commentary on it where he acts as someone that's a little bit too haughty to do it, but he found that he actually enjoyed it. And now he's in this awkward like, how do I act moment? And I think we've all had that experience
right?
Where you're like, I'm like too good to do this. And then you do it and you're like, this is kind of like fun, but like, how do I act like I'm still mad about it?
No.
Yeah.
It's like after one of these scenes where he has like a talk with her and he's like, hey, isn't your mother going to wonder like when you haven't written to her? How are you going to fake, how is Valka going to fake the handwriting?
Yeah.
And so Thorn kind of takes this from a more selfish route. She's like, oh, I need to protect my position as a Goose Girl. Like, I don't want to be taken away from this. So and again, this is another moment where she takes more ownership of the situation and walks up to the palace, which is huge for like Thorn as a character, because she went from being bullied and like avoiding everything and hiding to confronting the princess on her own, confronting Valka on her own. So she walks up to the castle, has an audience with Valka, who's dumb. Valka is just kind of dumb.
Stupid. And it becomes more and more evident as the story progresses and you see all the ways that she's like fucking up.
Yeah. But Alira is like, hey, my mom is expecting a letter from me after I arrived. Are you going to write it? Well, Valka, no, I'm not going to write it. Like,
why would I write the letter?
You write it for me. And so they come to this agreement where Thorn is going to write letters for Valka. Valka's going to dictate them. And everything's going to be hunky-dory until a certain someone gets involved in the process.
When does he first find out that something is sus?
It's her first letter. Like this is not a dumb dude.
Yeah.
So, like I think Thorn goes back to her like room at the stables and is drafting this letter with her like trunks and stuff around her and sends the letter. And then like the next day she is summoned by Prince Kestrin, who's like, hello, young Goose Girl.
I have some questions. Because doesn't he have the letter and then the marriage proposal? And he's like, can you maybe tell me why these signatures are absolutely identical?
It's even better than that because like he doesn't lead with that. He's like, by the way, I need some correspondence with.
Oh, yeah, he fucking dupes her.
It was so cute because he's like, my whatever language, like your language that Alira speaks, isn't great. I especially can't write it well. And you're available and the princess is busy. Could you please write a letter for me? And so he dictates a letter for her. And as she's done writing it, he takes this letter out of her hand, pulls out a copy of the first letter that she wrote for the princess and says, look at here.
It's like, why are these identical?
Why are they the same? And so Thorn, like, kudos to Thorn. She pulls this excuse out of her ass.
100%.
I learned the princess's like script because I needed to write for her when we were kids.
Yeah, we had the same like instructor tutor and like I would just help her out when she was too busy. Like, girl, that is so half-assed.
Not gonna like Prince Kestrin like rolls his eyes like, are you come on, like can you do better? He's a super fun character because he knows. So this and also she puts the pieces together. The random man who appeared in her bedroom is the same as Prince Kestrin.
Yeah, he's a sorcerer.
Yeah. And he's smart and not.
It's nice too because he's not pushy. like surprisingly so, because he almost kind of respects the fact that Alira is just kind of like accepting her circumstances, and he's kind of prodding her in, ways like, hey, like, do you see how Lady Valka is acting? And like, hey, like, are you okay with someone just taking your whole identity? But it's never in an aggressive, like, accusatory way or like dragging her into anything, which I feel like if you have those hyper aggressive masculine, like, they would like berate her for her decision.
I think he's still kind of uncertain at this. Like in this first confrontation, he knows something's going on, but he doesn't know like a body swap has happened.
That's fair. That's not my first assumption either.
But he's a sorcerer, so he knows there's something going on. So he is like not antagonistic towards Thorn. He's like just trying to solve a puzzle, which I really much appreciated.
And that's kind of his attitude the whole time, is he's trying to like figure out what the fuck is going on. He's like, this is giving me like weird vibes, but like I can't identify like what the weird vibes are, which, fair when it's a literal body swap happening.
I think the only thing that I found lacking in this book was I needed a little bit more chemistry between Prince Kestrin and Thorn.
Because there's like moments of it, but it's only when they're like griping and snarky at each other.
And they're very brief scenes too. Like I wanted to see more of Prince Kestrin as a character.
And I think that's probably how this book could have been longer. Like it could have gotten up to that like high 300s, low 400s if they had developed out some of the like scenes and chemistry between them, or like more of their meetings, or like more of the romance indicators we normally see.
Because you don't get a lot of that at all.
No.
It's just these one-off meetings.
But it's still kind of like satisfying, and it's like cutesy kind of way.
It's easy breezy, beautiful reading.
Yeah.
So she Thorn leaves her confrontation with Prince Kestrin kind of like unsettled, but like, well, I guess things are okay for now. Then she goes and hangs out with Falada again and learns about the history of the horses and the humans.
This is weird, but I would 100% read a book
about Falada.
Yeah, 100%. Because I want to know about his wife.
That would be a fun story.
Yeah. Like I haven't read those like animal books since like I was a very young middle schooler, but this seems almost satisfying that I'd be like, yeah, I'll read a book about horses.
Yeah, Falada as a character is just so unique.
Yeah, because he's snarky and haughty in the like humans and horses are equivalent intellectual creatures, and you're just a stupid one of them. And it's like, whoa, okay.
Falada kind of acts like the way you would expect the male hero lead.
Yeah.
Is it MLC?
Oh, yeah. Main love character. That doesn't sound right.
Male main character, MMC. FMC and MMC.
Yeah, there we are. We got there.
Oh, God. So yeah, he acts like he has a lot of the same tendencies as those MMCs do. It feels weird saying that. I'm not going to use that anymore. Nope, not anymore.
It kind of like went over my skin in a not pleasant way.
It's not pleasant. Nope.
But I also love how he's just kind of like, he's how the Fae should act.
Yeah.
He's like not Fae, but
he's also like 500 years old.
Yeah. He actually acts like a 500-year-old having to deal with a 16-year-old girl. Like, checks out.
So Princess or Thorn has spent some time with Falada. She's out in the pastures. There's a goose boy, a goose dude who is kind
of
Corbe. Also, there is a can't say the German name, but there's a Corbe character in the original fairy tale who does the same shit.
Fuck that guy.
So the original goose dude, see something in German, plays a very similar role to Corbe in this story.
Yeah. And he's described very unsettlingly, like, is this kind of dark, menacing, like doesn't do anything, but just kind of like stares menacingly at her from like distances.
You don't feel good when he's in the scene. Not at all.
And so I think even Alira and Falada are kind of like, that's a little sketchy. And so Falada's like, we're going to go to the pastures together. You're not really allowed to go by yourself.
Yeah.
Which turns out to be a good decision in the end.
It gets darker and darker as you progress through the book. It kind of starts off feeling very fairy tale like, and then you start getting deeper into the world itself and learn that there's a lot more going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Thorn and Prince Kestrin have another interaction. Like, this seems to be like the repeated theme throughout the story, which is Kestrin like summons Thorn, or Thorn runs into him, and they have this like developing relationship where he's starting to piece more and more together, like what's going on. And it's this scene, the second interaction, where he's like, it's suspicious, it's a little sus that your personality and Princess Alira's personalities seem to have completely switched overnight.
Doesn't he call her a brat?
Yeah. He calls her like a spoiled brat, and yeah, so he has like no respect whatsoever for the current princess. And I think it's later on, but he confronts Thorn about having the princess's cloak.
Oh, yeah. And Alira is sweating. She is panicking because she's like, I cannot explain having this fucking coat.
Because she kept so it's the blue cloak that the king gave her, like early on when she was still back in her home palace. And for some reason she kept it or something.
I think... Yeah, because she was like wearing it and it fell off, and then it got stuck in the carriage, and she's like, there's not really a good opportunity to give it back to Lady Falca.
Yeah. And Prince Kestrin had her room searched or something and found this cloak, and he's like, this was like the last puzzle piece for him where he finally figured out who was who. But I thought it was so cool that he never actually articulates like what he understands now to Thorn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Later, so after this interaction, the second interaction with Prince Kestrin, Thorn is even more like unsettled. Like, she senses that the prince understands what's going on, but she doesn't quite know how much.
Yeah, and I think that's a fun kind of characterization too, that she knows that the jig is almost up, but she's like, nobody's saying anything, so I'm just gonna like
hang out as a ghost girl for a little bit longer.
I'm just gonna like stay here.
Yeah.
And you as the reader too, you're like, he's making some very like pointed comments, but like he's not doing anything about it. So maybe it's like he doesn't really know. So it's like a fun, like, well, we'll just sit in limbo for a while.
This is one of those stories where I think we could have benefited from seeing, having a perspective switch.
Oh, that would be kind of fun.
Sitting in like Prince Kestrin's view, like as he's trying to figure things out.
That would be kind of fun. But it's also fun, like, not knowing like what he's going to do. Because I will say that it's not the conflict, but the uncertainty was really well done in this. Like, it's drawn out, but it doesn't feel like it's drawn out.
Yeah, it's
like you really never know.
Yeah, that is very satisfying. I just wish there were more interactions, so the uncertainty was even more like, they won't they?
She's doing this cute little like shoulder shimmy.
I can't help it. Yeah. It gives me warm fuzzies.
Yeah. We are about to go into my other favorite character of this that I would 100% read a whole like spin-off book.
Oh, Red Hawk?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I thought that this was going to be like Olenna. I
got Major Tortle.
Yeah, I did too.
I just think tortellini when I say that word out loud.
Tortellini.
But so Tamora Pierce's Alana series is set in a Tortle universe, and that's the setting vibe I got.
Same. It's almost like those books are for extrovert children, and then Thorn is for the introvert children.
Yeah.
Because we have like the line, but that's the only difference. The rest of the vibes are
same,
identical.
But so those books feel a little bit younger.
Yeah.
This is like a slightly older version of that setting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the same introduction of like Red Hawk as a character. Anyway, Thorn goes into the city. Like she goes to the temple to pray or something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And she ends up saving a kid in the town, right?
Is it the kid first?
It's a kid, and then she helps like a group of dudes avoid some soldiers, right?
Oh, I think that's the bull. So she's like stepping out, and then there's like soldiers off in the distance like screaming about something, and then she sees this dude just like fucking booking it down the thing, and his like arm is bleeding everywhere, and he gets caught up because Falada is basically like blocking the whole alleyway because he's a giant ass horse. And so she kind of like scoots him away, and then he's able to disappear. And then the soldiers are like, oh, where'd the guy go? And she's like, I don't know, like I think he went that way. But she's like hiding him. And then she's like, I think you need help. Like, you're like dying. And the guy's just like, ugh. And so she delivers him off to like wherever he lives in whatever hovel and has to like climb up the stairs, and they like fucking face plant. And she's like, ugh, what house do you live in? And she like runs up and knocks on the door. And this like guy answers with like a knife to her throat. And he's like, what the fuck do you want? And she's like, I just like found this guy and he's like hurt. And I just trying to get him back to his house. And the guy's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then he's like, that's my guy. And then
I wish people could see you replay this scene in front of me. It is just the cutest fucking thing ever.
I'm a hand talker, and so there's a lot of movement going on right now.
Yep.
But so basically she helps him, and then she just like walks back and she's like, that was sus. Like, that guy's probably gonna die, but I hope he doesn't. And then I think that's it for a while.
Yeah.
But that was Red Hawk.
Red Hawk
He's probably hot.
Yeah. I think
he has big dick energy.
It always comes back to that. I wonder if the Sunbolt trilogy is set in the same world, because I can't imagine this author creating the Red Hawk character and not pursuing it later. Also, there's a second book in the series.
What?
Dauntless, I think.
What is that? Yeah.
Right? I don't think I read it.
No. Why does that sound tickling my brain again?
I don't know.
It's there.
Anyway, she has adventure in the city, saves this dude, goes back to the stables.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is where it starts to get a little darker.
Yeah.
So we mentioned like Goose Dude, who's got major scary vibes. He, like you said, decides one day, like, I've had enough of your like bullshit, and you're very pretty. And he tries to assault her in the pasture.
Yeah.
And
I think she just smacks the shit out of him.
She's got a staff, right? Yeah. So she manages to like beat him and gets away. Mm-hmm. And as she's running away, she falls down a ravine.
Yeah. It felt very, have you ever been lost before?
All the time.
Oh. We got a little too existential there.
But like actually lost in the woods?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. It's that same kind of, and it's surprising how well this is conveyed, but it's that same feeling of just like very confused and distorted, and you have no idea where you are, but you're like panicking, but slowly panicking.
It's like a feeling of like, it's an ominous, like foreboding.
Yeah.
That just sits on you. You're like, ugh.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't lost, but I was out hiking, I think in Arizona. And I remember like going up a dirt trail, and I got halfway up, and for no reason whatsoever, I felt like I was being watched. Ugh. And I felt like something bad is going to happen if I keep walking up this trail. And it's like one of the few times in my life I'm like, you know what? I have no reasonable, rational explanation for how I'm feeling. I turned tail and I turned into a trail runner, and I ran all the way down the mountain until I got back.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I got lost, I don't know, like 7 or 8, like right when you start like being able to remember things. Mm-hmm. We were camping, and I was playing with like older kids, and they kind of ran off around a corner, and I didn't see where they went, and then I got lost, and I was like in Pacific Northwest Evergreens, where you're like going to die.
Everywhere looks the same, and especially in our like rainforesty type woods.
Yeah, and it was like getting dark, and I was just like walking down this paved road. I was by myself as like a 7-8-year-old, so it's that same feeling.
I feel so bad for little Katie right now.
I was, moderately traumatized, but it's that same feeling, and it's crazy that she was able to convey that in so little words. But it's that exact feeling of like, I'm not really sure where I am, and I know I'm about to start panicking, but like not quite. And you're like, I guess I just have to like keep walking, because she's like walking down this ravine, and she's like, I have no idea how I'm gonna get back.
Emotionally traumatized from being attacked by this big goose dude.
Yeah, and I think it's like the middle of winter too, and that's why
she doesn't have a cloak or anything. Like, and Falada was just chilling with his oats in the stable. Yeah. And then she like kind of like walks down into this tunnel thing, and then she sees a room, and the room she's seen in a dream, and so she's like, this is not gonna end well. And so she kind of turns around, she's like, that's suspicious, and then she kind of like hides into this little crack when she hears voices coming down, and she like just sits there and falls asleep basically, because it's like almost freezing outside. Yeah.
She was almost brutally attacked. She fell down a ravine. She's not having a good day.
No. So she just kind of draws into herself. And like you said, like kind of blacks out a little bit. Yeah. And the next thing she knows, she hears this scene. Oh my God. So the next thing she hears is like this voice like above her saying like lady, lady, lady. And I'm like, oh my God. And it's Prince Kestrin standing over her, and he scoops her up, and finally he says Thorn. And so I don't know if I read too much into this, but I felt like him calling her lady over and over again instead of Thorn or girl or anything like that was him trying to acknowledge, like, I know that, Thorn isn't your real name. I know who you are, but I can't say anything yet. So he calls her lady instead.
Yeah. And it's also one of those, I think there's always those moments in not fake dating, where they like won't say their first name in like historical romances, and then the first time they do, it's like woo. I feel like that was a very like equivalent
very
moment.
tingly moment. Yes.
Yeah. He's like, I'm gonna be distant and impersonal about this, and then my heart's breaking. Like, you need to wake up.
He and his like companion, like man friend, like get her back to the palace and get her like washed up and taken care of, and when she wakes up and in the palace, he's like, I think you need to leave the stables and live in the palace, because at this point, like, we know he knows. She's pretty certain that he knows that she knows. Like, everybody knows. But she is clinging so desperately to her identity as the Goose Girl, and she feels so safe with her like newfound like second family. She's made all these friends, and also she fears and hates Valka.
Yeah,
because can you imagine if like Thorn goes to live in the palace and Valka's like, Prince Kestrin did what for you?
Yeah, well, that exact scenario or a variant of it, and it fucks you up. So that's a very reasonable fear that she has. But she's like, no, I kind of enjoy my life as a Goose Girl. Like, I'm good. And he's like, okay, like, I don't really love this, but sure, you can continue living in your fake world for a little bit longer.
Yeah. So she goes back to stables after she recovers. There's some filler scenes, like a little bit with just her like talking to Falada and like interacting with her second family that she has. And then she goes back to the city, to the temple or something. And she's at the temple, and this mysterious figure is like, you should come with me.
Oh, it's like a little kid. Because I think that's where she meets her like kid friend.
Yeah.
He's like, you got to come with me. And it's like, oh, you're so cute. And he's like,
I'll come with you.
Big and bad. It's like, you are 2 feet tall.
So this kid escorts her to a meeting with the man that she had saved like previously.
I love how like angry he is. He's like, I owe you a debt. I'm not a man that has debts. Like, what do you want? And she's like, I don't really like want anything. I was just like helping you out of the goodness of my heart. And he's like, that's fucking fake. Like, how much money do you want? And she's like, no, that's like literally what happened. And he's like, what?
I can relate to that feeling so much. Where you're like, I didn't do anything for you. Please don't do anything for me. I don't want to feel obligated in any way. Like,
I did this because of my like social ineptitude. Like,
yeah. And so I think that's how Thorn's feeling is like, I don't want any kind of connection. Like, please leave me alone.
Yep. And it's fun too, because during their next interaction, you realize how much that impressed him, or like he respected that. He's like, oh, okay, so you like a real one. Like, this is cool. This is fine. So she basically, unintentionally impresses a man that has like a bajillion-dollar bounty on his head and is the most notorious thief in the entire city.
Oh, but sweet Red Hawk. He is.
Yeah.
We need to find out about Red Hawk.
Yeah. Like, what is up with those characters that are just like competent? They got big dick energy. That's the only way I can convey it. Like,
I forget which episode that you mentioned this on. It was a Crash Landing episode, and you said that it's a competency.
Yeah.
That is the best descriptor. I'm like, I have never had words for it before, but it's like the act of doing any task with confidence and absolute knowledge.
Yeah.
Total turn on.
Yeah. Because we will get to the scene probably in the next episode, or maybe it's in this one, but he has another competency thing where she like runs to him with a problem and he's like, I got it. And it's like, whoa, what? You have it? I don't need to like tell you and explain to you how to do it, or like, help you do it.
I got it.
It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not the point of this like children's, story.
No, but it's totally good. It's that big dick energy. Like,
yep. It really is. Anyway, this is a pro Red Hawk stan podcast.
So she kind of leaves and he still owes her a favor, but he's kind of okay with it. Mm-hmm. And then she's in the stables again and she receives a summons from Prince Kestrin and he has invited her to a dinner.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah.
The prince is inviting the Goose Girl to a dinner.
Yeah. I wish that he had like turned his brain on for like 0.2 seconds and like recognized that that might not be a good idea.
Not in the slightest. But that's kind of where we stop for part one.
And was it part one where she has the thing with the kid where she's like, oh, we'll just use the money to... Was that in this one?
Probably, and I missed it.
Oh, it's not important, but it's just like a cute, like, she has this little like gaggle of street kids that kind of just love her, and I love that.
There's a lot of details thrown in about the city and like some of the problems that are going on as she's visiting like Red Hawk and seeing how life truly is. There's this very stark contrast between life at the palace and life in the stables and then life in the city. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where Red Hawk's character seems to kind of have more of an impact.
Yeah, because there's like a line throughout the story about justice and like different interpretations of justice and like expressions of justice. Seems to be like a thread throughout it.
Yeah, it's definitely a theme here.
Yeah, but she unintentionally pays for like a internship. What's the other word? Apprenticeship?
Apprenticeship for one of the street kids.
Like a fuck ton of street kids. Because she's like, here's like a necklace. Like, I hope that'll like pay for something. Or maybe this is later. But we can talk about it now. It's cute. And the guy is like, you have no idea. You don't really have any experience like valuing jewelry. And she's like, oh, like starts blushing. Like, that's not enough, is it? Like, I have others. And he's like, this will pay for like 15 street kids to get apprenticeship. And she's like,
well, then pay for 15 street kids. I'm good.
She's just like the patron saint of like all these kids that are like, I just want to bake bread.
It's
just a cute, like,
I think that is in part one because she starts to like have a close relationship with the kids.
And they just like follow her around. They're like, hey, Auntie Thorn,
how's it going?
She's like, yep, I'm 15 and I have 18 children now. So
it's again, and this is why I think although being 15 years old, she seems like a much more mature character based on some of her behaviors and actions.
Yeah.
She's very selfless.
Yeah. Because I feel like around that 15, 16 age, you hate kids. And then it kind of like comes back at like the 18 or 19 where you're like, I understand you. You're just a small human. But there's definitely an age in like pre-teen, teen time frame where you would drop kick a kid, no questions asked.
Yeah. There's still, I think, a sense of rivalry when you're that young.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's why she seems a little bit older because she's like, you are my adopted children. And I don't know that that's a very...
That's not, no, that would not happen.
Yeah. But that's part one. Everyone is sus, and Falada is a talking horse.
I think we found our episode title. Well, from our shelf to yours.
We'll see you on the next page. Hi, readers. If you'd like to help us pick our next book, send us a message on Instagram.
Or if you'd like to just listen, we post new episodes every Monday and Wednesday on Spotify, Apple, and Amazon. Thanks for listening.
Bussin'.